Dear Liam, your Mama and Papa's honeymoon, a preamble. A proverbial trip of a lifetime was preceded by one of the happiest days of our lives, our wedding day. God had blessed us with respectful jobs and the means to, as Emerald would say, kick it up a notch. The only place we cut back was on a limo, which led to the funniest story from that sunny May afternoon. My dad was to meet us as we came out of the church and be our fancy limo driver. However, after the burst of rose petals stopped flying, we realized my dad was not there. We acted naturally and proceeded through rumblings of, "Where are they going?" and "Where's the car?" to walk around the church where we found him. Besides the little snag, everything else was perfect. For instance, the church had a coveted long middle aisle. I and the rest of the rather large wedding party, more than 20 family and friends, could not believe our eyes as your mama's beauty and grace filled the sanctuary. Later, at the reception, all the attendees danced the night away, even your late great Grandma Betty. Fortunately, the flight to our 2-week Paris-Bordeaux-Nice honeymoon was not until late the next day, so we slept well that night in anticipation of the excitement that was soon to come. Our honeymoon. Honeymoon in France was a no-brainer. We love the country and its wine, and that's why your name is Guillaume, French for William. In preparation for the trip, I studied the language, often, using Learn in Your Car French, and I had the basics down. As you will come to learn, I'm a big planner, so every facet of the holiday was prearranged. We didn't want to drive all over France, so I booked the high-speed train, the TGV, from Paris, where we first stayed 3 nights, to Bordeaux for 3 nights, to Nice for 4 nights, back to Paris for another 2 nights. Paris. First thing we noticed about the City of Light was the heavy traffic. It was easy to skip the rental car and take the train everywhere. Next, we noticed the size of the hotel rooms are a tad small. Paris is a huge city, but when there are more than 2.2 million people living there, and God knows how many tourists, it can be a little cramped. Still, we adjusted, even used a bidet for the first time. One of the first excursions was of course to the Eiffel Tower. It wasn't the clearest day when we went up, but we still had a blast. We ate lunch at 58 Tour Eiffel on the way to the top. Probably one of the most expensive fill-your-gut meals we ever had. We went for the jambone as an appetizer, but it was cured, not cooked, so we picked at it. Too salty and weird tasting. In fact, the French have no issues with uncooked meat, or not so normal in the US kinds of dishes. On another night out, the waiter pushed the steak tartare and the caviar, and your mama got a tad freaked out and started to cry. At yet another restaurant, I ordered something safe, the fish, and discovered that fish comes with the head in France. Sans la tête, s'il vous plaît, we quickly spouted for the rest of the trip. Besides also checking out the Arc de Triomphe, the Louvre Museum, and a casino to the north of town, we took the train for a day trip to Normandy and rented a car. The first time either of us had driven outside North America to the famed World War II site. Having been a soldier, with a father who served in West Germany during the Cold War, and a grandfather who fought in the Battle of the Bulge, it was an honor to stand on such hallowed ground. I still have some of the water from when we walked Omaha Beach. The cemetery, actually American soil, overlooking the beach, was awe-inspiring. Thousands of immaculate headstones on a well-manicured lawn are a testament to the devotion our nation has to its brave warriors who paid the ultimate sacrifice. Bordeaux. I loved this bit of the honeymoon. We took a cab from the train station to our hotel in downtown Bordeaux. It was a beautiful city on the Garonne River that features a ginormous water fountain in the middle of town. One guy we spoke to said it was the biggest one in Europe, but he was speaking French, and I might have misunderstood him. Our hotel was also big, especially compared to Paris. And then there's the wine. It's everywhere and relatively cheap too. Our first big wine day involved a posh tour of the left bank of the river where St. Julien and Margaux are located, the latter of which has some of the most expensive and best wines in the world. We met some really nice people who didn't speak too much English, so it was a successful language immersion day. Tours work out well because one doesn't have to book any of the tastings. Even the lunch was preset and communal style. Outside of Paris, the chow is pure French, not too Americanized, so many of the items aren't too appealing. Pizza and croque monsieurs are in abundance and adequately fill the gut. The next day consisted of another adventure we will not soon forget. We rented a car and went to an office of tourism, which are all over the place in France, to schedule wine tastings in the countryside. I confidently went up to the counter and said we wanted to visit Chateau Lafite Rothschild, Chateau Margaux, and Chateau d'Aquin, 3 of the best wineries in the world. Well, one just can't visit to drink their wines. We were bummed, but I guess it makes sense. They sell cases of $100 plus bottles of wine. Why would they want to let me taste it so they can just sell me one bottle? So instead, the tourism lady called around to other lesser-known wineries that were offering tours and tastings. The thing was that they didn't have maps to the place. She just gave us directions to the general area and told us, "Don't worry, signpost it." Well, your mama and I were worried, but we trusted her and went on our merry way. We could have scheduled wineries in Saint-Emilion, the famous region on the right bank of the Garonne River. But being 2 graves in Bordeaux, we chose the Graves region of southern Bordeaux. The wine there is cheaper, but still quite good, and you don't have to wait as long to drink it. Getting to the Graves region was easy off the main drag. Your mama drove because most cars in Europe have manual transmissions, and I never learned how to drive them. She will be sure to teach you when you're old enough, so you won't be placed in the same predicament. We made a couple turns that the tourism lady told us to make and began looking for the first winery, Chateau Latour Mataliac. Sure enough, we saw a sign that pointed us straight to it, but we were late. I practiced my "I'm sorry, we're late" speech in French, and the owner quickly countered in English that it wasn't a problem because our name was Grave. The gentleman was very nice and went out of his way to make us feel at home. He broke down the complete history of the place and informed us that the winery was forced to host Nazi Germans before the Allied forces liberated France. The Latour Mataliac owner was kind enough to recommend a place to eat for lunch, where we gladly ordered the quiche, which we later received with a bite taken out of it. A true mom-and-pop place, the little girl found us quite fascinating because we spoke funny and looked even funnier. It was an experience as we spoke not a word of English. Next up was Chateau Plantat, also signposted and very easy to find. We quickly realized everyone was going to give us the same type of tour, and that there was a distinct possibility it could get old. How many barrels and grape grocers can one look at? We ended our self-guided tour of the Grave region at Chateau Piada in Sauternes, also signposted and very easy to find. We got a little lost, however, and I used my French to ask for directions, but used English for the road numbers, so the guy looked at me like I had a horn coming out of my head. We ended up finding it. Good thing, too. Your mama loves sweet wine, and Sauternes is the world's sweet wine mecca, so your papa earned big brownie points. Woohoo! Nice. After Bordeaux, we set out by train to Nice on the French Riviera. Your papa's brownie points went through the roof when the cab took us to our beautiful hotel. Beachfront hotel. Your mama was in heaven. Our room faced the sparkling blue Mediterranean Sea, and the city's shopping district was right behind the hotel. There's also a nice, pardon the pun, concrete boardwalk that runs the length of the city, so running was easy and quite scenic, if you know what I mean. Our hotel happened to be connected to a casino too. God bless France. Unlike America, however, one has to dress appropriately to enter the establishment. I found that out the hard way. That shorts and a t-shirt won't do. Later, after I cleaned up, we made it through the front door, but were turned away again because they check in everyone with a passport. 5 minutes later, we were playing good old-fashioned American blackjack in Nice, France. Or so I thought. The object, 21, is the same, but the French don't play like Americans. For example, in America, if the dealer has a 10 showing and the player has a 6 and a 7, which is 13, the player would hit, assuming the dealer had a 7 or higher to win. In France, if there is a chance that a player will bust, he or she will not take the hit. This is disconcerting to American players like your papa. Nevertheless, we got used to it and had a good time anyway. Our first excursion in Nice was a tour to Monte Carlo. We probably should have taken the train, but we weren't that comfortable with the local system yet. It worked out because we got all the local insights from our driver, who doubled as our photographer. He drove us around the famous motorway and took us to Princess Grace's mansion as well. Of course, the other stop was to the casinos. There are two, one with free entry and the other not, so we played in the free one. Who needs to play blackjack in a tux? We also had dinner there, which was a little pricey. I asked for the number 36, but it turned out that was the price of just the entree. Embarrassing, but funny, and we were on honeymoon, so who cared? Going to Bono's house on the sea was my ulterior motives for a trip to Nice. His house was in Es-sur-Mer, a couple local train stops from Nice. Knowing the layout of the land from our previous day's driver, we were confident taking the train there the next day. Bono's house is almost a stone's throw away from the Es station, but we didn't know that at the time. We got out of the train and walked to the Office of Tourism kiosk next door, but the lady played dumb about the location of Bono's house, so we had to venture to the shore on our own. I knew it was orange, and I think we were walking right by it when we saw another orange house in the distance that had its own private little island. I said to your mama, "That has to be the house of a rock star." We made our way, a long way from the actual house, to the island, passing another person, who later we saw swimming in the nude, who said he didn't know the location of Bono's house. I doubt that was true, but it may have been true because the idea of celebrity is not as impressive to the French as it is to Americans, and that's why Bono and the Edge have a house there. Much easier to blend in and have privacy. That's until two American U2 fans come to Ez on honeymoon. We eventually made it to the orange house and took pictures galore, even brought back rocks from the beach. I'm not sure how long it took me to find pictures and a YouTube of the actual house, but it was a while. This made our honeymoon story much better, and even better now because we know we were hanging out at someone else's place. On the same trip, we continued on to Cannes, where the famous film festival was taking place. We asked folks how we could get tickets, but were quickly informed one needs to get tickets well in advance. Unlike other places in the Riviera where the beaches are pebbly, the beach in Cannes is sandy. We hadn't come to swim, as it was not hot enough yet, but some folks were. There were a lot of bugs, so we figured we made the right call. We needed more time in the south of France, but we had a blast and will definitely take you to Provence and Côte d'Azur, French for the Riviera, the regions in which Marseille and Nice are located, when you get a little bit older. Before leaving for Paris, we knew in our heart we would be back to Nice sometime soon. Once in Paris, there were still many choices to make as to how to spend our last 2 days. We settled on Euro Disney, a regional train trip away from the big city. On the way there, we noticed everyone was wearing jeans and long-sleeve shirts, but we were dressed as it was pretty warm that morning. We were lightly dressed. As it turned out, the French folk were right, and we were chilly when we got off the train. Undaunted, we bought Disney long-sleeve shirts and had fun conjuring our little kid spirits that day. Your papa even returned his shirt for a refund before leaving the park. Later that night, being fans of the movie the same name, we also went to the Moulin Rouge. Our last day in Paris consisted of a trip to the famed Notre Dame Cathedral. They were having mass, so we lit a candle, thank God for the amazing honeymoon, and soon bid adieu to France in all its glory.